He says Dennis Sperling is a failed layer that,
Mm,
whatever that means, that wants to sue Africa for slavery, not Europe, but African countries.
mhm.
I'm gonna let you respond to that. I think I know what your response will be.
Yeah.
I don't think they've done enough research.
Well, unfortunately, we have a lot of people who have romanticized Africa, unfortunately.
Yes.
Now here's what happened. So about 5 or 6 years ago, somebody asked me to learn about uh or what my position was on reparations. And so I approach it from a position of an attorney. What is somebody owes somebody some money. What was the violation that caused the act which aggrieved them? And so in this regard, I just look at the history books. Okay, so you want reparations because our people were enslaved. Okay. You want reparations because they were put in the hulls of slave ships. You want reparations because they were captured and sold in the Congo and what we call Nigeria and Togo, Benin and Ghana and Liberia. Okay, my question is, well, who put them on the boats? Who sold them? Where did they come from? And so I began to do the research and come to find out there were literally hundreds of slave pens and dozens of ports along the west coast of Africa. And the question began, well, how did they get in those pens in the first place? Because history tells us that these European soldiers or these European naval officers were not necessarily um, not even officers. They weren't going into the interior of Africa pulling slaves out. A person would come from the interior of Africa and they would change hands 6 to 7 to 12 dozens of times before they finally ended up. And I learned that a lot of these so-called kingdoms literally manufactured wars so that they would have a reason to go occupy and take other people. So when I look at that, I say, well, clearly, if we're going to sue European countries, if we're going to sue the United States and American corporations and insurance companies and banks, well, who caused the theft in the first place? If somebody steals my car and sells it to somebody else who knows it's stolen, I'm not just going to sue the person who got the property. I'm going to sue the thief too. You see what I'm saying? So Africa definitely those successor states, those nations which now exist, did not exist in 1492 and 1500. But
Well,
it's succeeding them with that. I'm still here.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it was breaking up a little bit.
So under the theory of successor state, I would say under the theory of successor state liability, those countries would now exist still owe that debt because not only do you inherit the property and the resources of a nation, but you also inherit the debt. Now, some people say, well, again, those countries didn't exist. Well, guess what? The African Union, those very same states are saying, well, we want the United States and Europe to pay us reparations for what they did. Well, hey, Nigeria, you only came around about 50 years ago. Oh, no, well, that doesn't matter because we're still occupying the land. We're still the same people. So that logic swings both ways. So yes, I do believe some African nations who participated in the slave trade under the theory of successor state liability owes reparations to black people. Now, here's the thing I need you to understand, and this is far too sophisticated for most people. I want you to hear me, brother. Okay? You got it because you're smart, but the public doesn't figure it out. If you have an opponent who realizes that these individuals in the United States have now convinced the government to give them permission or enacted a statute which allows them to sue African nations which exist in the United States. And they're looking at the fact that they may end up owing Black Americans or foundational Black Americans trillions of dollars, and that we will seize their assets in Europe. We will seize their assets on the high seas, whether it be oil or whatever. In other words, you might not have the money there, but all those people who are leaders of those countries who hide their money in those European banks, we will seize all of those assets. Do you realize the sort of leverage that we have in negotiating whether or not you're going to cut through that red tape when we want to come get citizenship in Ghana or Nigeria? Do you realize the fact that if you do anything to our people who are over there and who are trying to set up these enclaves uh, in these different settlements for foundational Black Americans in any of those countries, we will again take your money. That's the type of leverage we need. You negotiate from a position of power. I'm not begging anyone. You see, I negotiate with a bat in my hand. And see, my people, and I'm talking about my foundational Black American people, have not been done right. We have not been treated well by African brothers and sisters. And so now at this point, since we're not the same people, and the Africans will tell you all the time, oh yeah, we weren't selling our own people into slavery. Oh no, they were from different tribes. Good. Keep that same energy. Because now I'm telling you, we're not suing our own people. We're suing people who sold us into slavery. And you've already admitted that we weren't brothers and we weren't Black. So we're going to negotiate from a position of power. If you don't give us what we want, we will take it. We will use the might and power and the influence of the United States in America. We will seize your oil. We will seize your proceeds. We will treat you just like we treat Haiti. We will extract all the resources from you and we will get rich doing it. A lot of people don't like that talk. They do not like it when you talk harshly. I don't romanticize Africa. I don't romanticize anybody. When you ask me to be your attorney, this is the position that I take. My side is going to win. We're going to do everything we can to win. We have the might of the United States behind us, and there's a justice that needs to be done. And I feel like a president like Donald Trump would say, oh, you guys want to sue Africa and bring resources to the United States? Oh, let me go ahead and sign that law into place. And so that's where I'm at. And he can do it with an executive order. The laws are already on the books. That's the part about it. The case where they sued Saudi Arabia for what happened in 9/11, it's already there. The idea or the discussion about successor state liability, it's already there. It's part of international law. Nobody wants Black people to flex their power, especially other Black people. And a lot of people, unfortunately, as I said earlier, about 25% of the population of the United States, which falls under the category of Black American, are not foundational Black American. They are literally people of first generation, second generation, African descent or Caribbean descent. So their loyalties are not necessarily unified with ours as foundational Black American. And that is the problem with taking a poll of modern day Black Americans. They don't have the same interests. They identify more with their nation, their country, or even immigrants than they do what we have going on here as foundational Black Americans. But that's what I got.
Well, one thing I like that
In
you
other words,
said
brother,
was,
take it. If they don't want to give it to you, take it from them. You kind of went, yeah.
yeah, well, one thing I like that you said was about how you don't romanticize Africa because a lot of
Mhm.
people, I don't know if it's just Black Americans or the
Mhm.
Africans themselves, that make it seem like there was no wars and there was nothing going on negative at all in the continent of Africa when everywhere throughout the world, humans have
Mhm.
fought wars and enslaved the captives afterwards and
Yeah.
sold the slaves off in different parts of the world. In Constantinople, they had North African slaves, they had Eastern European slaves. I mean, this is nothing new. So for somebody to make it seem like the Europeans just marched into the interior of Africa, which they knew nothing about, which would be way too dangerous for them to do,
Mhm.
is just absurd. Now, the next super chat says, love to see you guys on this collaboration from Irvin Hunt. Thank you for the $10 super chat. And he sends another one, says, great collab. Thank you again. And the Black Chess Authority says, this is from an old head. Dennis is a historian and a lawyer. I could agree. Thank you for the super chat. If you guys have any questions, make sure you send at least a $5 super chat or a cash app because I have my own questions for the guest today.
And and if you don't mind, I want to add in a little something. When we talk about the transatlantic slave trade, remember that went on from about the 1400s all the way up until 1807. But the Saharan slave trade, which is where they took Africans from Africa and sent them east, that lasted for 1,300 years. And so slavery on the African continent is nothing new. Africans have partaked in slavery. They do not have clean hands in this regard. In fact, let me share something else with you. When we talk about colonialization, colonization, the only reason that these Europeans were able to colonize Africa, especially the west coast of Africa, is because Africans willing to deal with them in the slave trade. After slavery ended and the English banned slavery, they literally took over a port that the Danish had. And the Danish sold the port. Okay, slavery's over. We taking over the port. And then Europe came in, number one, to shut down the slave trade. And then they began to exploit, not Europe, but Great Britain came in and exploited Africa even further. Africans opened the door to let Europeans in. It was Africans' fault that happened. They let the door in. And so from slavery on to colonialization, they have to accept the fact that their greed, that particular culture, that backstabbing culture. I'm gonna sell you. They would sell other Africans for a drum head of alcohol and weapons and all these other frivolous things. This is what we have to consider. So at some point, Africans have to look in the mirror and ask themselves, what part did we play in the exploitation of our continent? It's no different than Black Americans have to take a look at ourselves and look at the sycophants and individuals whose loyalty is dubious at best. We have to look at the mirror and ask ourselves, how much of this is our own doing? We let the vampire in the door, and then we're wondering why we got bit. So just something else to think about.